So as you can hear, the riders out on their warm-up lap at the moment, and to talk us through the grid, please welcome back our commentator, Alex Raby.
Well, it'll be interesting to see exactly what form the grid actually ends up taking here. It was a little bit of a lethargic start to the lineup for race 3 in the pit bike open category. The first race back after a short interval break. And it was scheduled, of course, that the mini GPs would be the first race back after the interval break. Here we are, the riders twisting and turning their way on to the grid. Will Howarth is the first one to come round the final corner. He's due to line up P3 on the starting grid. Finished in 5th place last time out, runner-up in race number 1. Alongside him there, Gareth Roberts completing the second row. The last of the riders are now finally getting out onto the track. First it looked as though we were going to have only a handful of riders, but one by one they've all brought themselves into play. Here we go then. It looks like those two latecomers will be forced to start from pit lane, and there were 3 riders engaging in a battle of who fancied racing the least by the looks of it, all going off the very back row of the grid when we had only 4 or 5 riders actually off the normal grid positions. So a little bit of an unusual start to the first race back after the break. We'll see how swiftly they can get through the field. It's Will Howarth who has hit the front early on. So Will Howarth leads. We'll see how the rest of the pack filter through. We've got Fallout out at the back of the pack as the race leaders continue to filter their way through. Very close indeed for second and third positions, and there's another overtake. So at the end of the opening lap then, it's Will Howarth who leads the way from Charlie Nesbitt in second. He's come all the way back from the handicap, self-imposed handicap, to lead the way now as he gets the better of Will Howarth to lead the way here. So it's Nesbitt in front, Howarth in second position. Howarth under some pressure now from Brandon Payne. Gareth Rogers in 4th position. Josh Ingram currently occupying P5. See, Max Cook is back out there on track after sitting out race number 2 following a fall earlier in the day, but he's back on track now in 6th position here. Charlie Nesbitt away and gone out in front. Will Howarth now in a pack of 4 riders from second down to 5th, and we've got a heavy fall coming off the final turn. Rider straight back up. I think that's Josh Ingram who has gone down. So Josh Ingram is down and not far off the racing line, but manages to get the machine up now. Whether he'll be able to continue in the race remains to be seen. It's Charlie Nesbitt who leads the way, almost 4 seconds faster than anyone else on lap number 2. Through now down the inside, we've got a series of position changes on lap 3. Will Howarth has dropped 3 places back already on this lap so far as Max Cook continues to find his way through the field. Josh Ingram running that machine out of harm's way and back towards the pit lane by the looks of things. So it's Nesbitt and Cook now in the top 2 positions. Will Howarth down in P5, so what a disastrous lap that was for Will Howarth. Gareth Roberts coming through to 4th and Brandon Payne to 3rd, but it's Max Cook who's made the most progress on lap number 3. 6 seconds the gap between the top 2, Charlie Nesbitt and Max Cook behind him. But Nesbitt 2 seconds faster than Max Cook on that previous lap, so I would suggest that we already know who the race winner will be in this race. Max Cook pulling clear of Brandon Payne. 0.7 of a second the gap between second and third. Still time for Curse of the Commentator to strike Charlie Nesbitt, of course. 3rd position, Brandon Payne and Gareth Roberts very closely packed together on the circuit as they come out of the Devil's Elbow. Weather's taken a bit of a turn for the worse here this afternoon. I think Leicester used the words blanket of sunshine earlier on today. It was still overcast, to be fair, but the sun had managed to sort of duck its way through to give us a bit of a yellowish hue here at the circuit, but that is certainly gone. And it wouldn't surprise me if we even have a few drops of the wet stuff, but we'll wait and see on that front, as just trying to work out exactly what happened there. I think Max Cook actually pulled over, let 4 riders through and then rejoined the race. So giving himself some sport by the looks of it is Max Cook. I'm quite convinced that as he came out of the spoon, he backed off, looked for the other 4, let them go and then rejoined the race. So that's a little bit unusual, but there he is, back up and running on the tail of the group now. Second place is with Gareth Roberts, Brandon Payne is 3rd, Will Howarth 4th. Jake Clark has joined what was a 4-rider battle. It's now a 5-rider battle with Max Cook at the tail of it. Cook coming into the spoon, cuts back up the inside coming off the turn to get the better of Jake Clark, so that's through for 5th position as they come round the carousel. Charlie Nesbitt setting laps in the 46s now, 46.9 on lap number 5, 47.1 on lap 6. Gareth Roberts, by contrast, in 2nd position, a 50.1 as Max Cook now comes through to pass Will Howarth and will shortly be up in 3rd position again. 2nd place Gareth Roberts, 3rd with Brandon Payne. Cook comes through then for 4th position. Well, whatever happened there with Max Cook, whether that was through choice or not, he is back up and running now. He comes soaring around the outside of Brandon Payne and through for P3. So it's Charlie Nesbitt leading, Gareth Roberts in 2nd, and then it's Max Cook who's picked off Brandon Payne. Will Howarth directly behind. Jake Clark has done well to stay with the front runners. Separate battle going on for 8th position. Jack Walters and Craig Walker separated by less than a second out on track. An isolated 7th place for Callum Wybrown. Of course, we are down to 9 runners now after Josh Ingram retired following a fall earlier in the race. Charlie Nesbitt coming through to set yet another hot lap. Max Cook just looking over his shoulder as he comes out of turn 1. They're side by side now for 4th, 5th and 6th positions. A group of 3 riders all going together as they come round the spoon now. 2nd place Gareth Roberts, 3rd is with Max Cook, 4th, 5th and 6th. Brandon Payne, Will Howarth and Jake Clark were particularly close together going up the Dragon Straight as Charlie Nesbitt comes through. It's almost like qualifying pace quite consistently. Charlie Nesbitt and his massive advantage out in front, very impressive indeed. Less of the wheeling in this race compared to race number 2, which was also taken mostly on the back wheel. Max Cook tucking in behind Gareth Roberts. Roberts with a new personal best on that previous lap, but Cook still closing the margin between the two of them. Will Howarth, meanwhile, seems to lose speed coming off club corner every lap around. Jake Clark not able to take advantage of it, the two running at very similar pace in 5th and 6th. Craig Walker gaining further ground on Jack Walters' last lap around, so that gap is down to just 0.3 of a second now. Craig Walker coming into the spoon. Jack Walters holding on up ahead of him. Charlie Nesbitt with 3 laps remaining, 9 laps completed now out in front. The remainder of the lead runners still working their way through Devil's Elbow, while Nesbitt is making his way through the carousel, so half a lap now his advantage over Gareth Roberts. 23 seconds between the top 2. And now Max Cook looking to the inside. For the moment he hasn't really made a serious stab at taking that position. Looks to the inside coming off the spoon, weaving their way back round towards the infield section. Now Cook gets a little bit lively, swerving right and left on the tail of Gareth Roberts for 2nd. Will Howarth seems to have upped the ante a little bit as well, with Brandon Payne, who was forced into setting a new personal best on lap 9 just to keep Howarth at bay. Howarth is dropping Jake Clark, who hasn't been able to stay with the pace in the battle for 4th position. Still Gareth Roberts and Max Cook nose to tail over P2. Cook runs a little bit wider on the final turn, seeing if he can get anything extra. At the moment the answer is no. He came swiftly through the field but moved his way up to 2nd, then seemed to give himself a bit of sport and dropped back, and now he may not be able to get to second position. We'll see what he can do in the remainder of this race. It's always hard to tell when the rider of real speed, whether they're just holding things back a little bit. Nesbitt with 1 lap remaining, almost forgotten about in this race as Max Cook tries to get the better of Gareth Roberts ahead of Devil's Elbow. And Will Howard still in behind Brandon Payne. 2 fights still to be resolved on this final lap. Howarth, as close as he's been for a while now to the tail of Brandon Payne, set a new personal best on lap 10 and another new personal best on lap 11. Just a tenth of a second between the two of them as they go up to the far side of the circuit. Charlie Nesbitt is now negotiating lap runners. He's met the group in 7th, 8th and 9th positions. He's going to pass 2 of them, so their race is run, Jack Qualters and Craig Walker, and that means that neither Qualters nor Walker can improve on their position, which is a shame for them because they were less than a second behind Callum Wybrow, and that race looked set to go to the checkered flag until Charlie Nesbitt passed 2 of them, but not 3 of them, to confirm that duel as being settled. Max Cook has managed to pick off Gareth Roberts, and open up a bit of a gap to the checkered flag. He finishes on 1 wheel. So it's Charlie Nesbitt who takes the checkered flag then with a 28-second margin over Max Cook. Gareth Roberts a second further in arrears. Brandon Payne then only just holding on ahead of Will Howarth, less than a tenth of a second in that battle for 4th. Jake Clark takes 6th position. Callum Wybrow is the last of the runners still circulating. He will come through to complete his race. Jack Qualters and Craig Walker behind him. Of course, they had already completed the race. They'd seen the checkered flag, but they've come round for another lap anyway. And Josh Ingram was your only non-finisher after his fall on Paddock Bend earlier in the race.
Back with round 7 of the 2017 FAB-Racing British Minibikes Championship here from Glanagors in Wales. Next race out on track is the 3rd and final race for the AC40 Pro. And a big happy birthday to Michelle Sherman-Boyd from Reuben Sherman-Boyd and Bo, aka Buster. That's from Team Boyd from County Antrim in Northern Ireland. Great to have the whole family back with us here at FAB-Racing once again. And to talk us round this grid for the AC40 Pro's 3rd and final race of the weekend, it's Alex Raby.
And that message timed quite nicely, Leicester, with the AC40 Pros now out on track. Front row of the grid will feature Ross Maguire and Eddie O'Shea. Behind them, Johnny Garnes and James Cook. Garnes, the winner last time out, came through to take the checkered flag in race 2 by less than 2 seconds ahead of O'Shea, who finished runner-up. 3rd row of the grid, Ollie Walker and Mason Foster. Row 4, Jimmy Parker and Troy Jeffrey. Rounding out the top 10, Dylan Mellor and Ryan Hitchcock. In the context of the series standings overall, Ross Maguire, who recorded 13 points first time out, or last time out rather I should say, is the championship leader ahead of Johnny Garnes, but with that margin having narrowed somewhat after race number 2, and with Garnes enjoying a strong result there. So very much up for grabs this category between Garnes, Maguire and O'Shea in particular. And those will be the 3 riders to focus on in the context of the series standings overall, and could well prove themselves the favourites in this race number 3. Riders being somewhat recalcitrant in these first races back after the interval break, and we've had a few riders late joining the grids. We are running slightly ahead of the original programmed schedule, of course. This is the AC40 Pro race number 3. Underway then with race 3. Eddie O'Shea making the early break. They're 3 abreast further down the order. Ross Maguire's got off to a slow start. He drops down to P5. Front 3 breaking away at the head of this pack. Eddie O'Shea. Johnny Garnes having come through quite well off the line as well. It's Ross Maguire who's missed out in the early part of the race, and Mason Foster now trying to come around the outside for 4th position, but Ross Maguire holds on to it. So it's O'Shea leading then, coming through Devil's Elbow here on lap number 1. O'Shea in front, tiny margin ahead of Johnny Garnes, a 1/10 of a second in it. Garnes, the winner of race number 2, looking for a way through already. Down the inside he goes, bombing down the Dragon Straight, and Johnny Garnes makes the move. Perfect move, in fact, for the race lead. Eddie O'Shea relegated to 2nd. 3rd is with James Cook. Ross Maguire now making his way back towards the group, the lead group, the top 3. Maguire has left Troy Jeffrey in an isolated 5th. Ryan Hitchcock in behind in P6. Ollie Walker, Mason Foster and Jimmy Parker losing out in comparison with their grid positions as Hitchcock moves through. Ryan Hitchcock has been good value this weekend, started 10th on the grid, and has made his way up to challenge the top 5 already. So at the end of lap number 2 then, it's Johnny Garnes who comes through to lead. Eddie O'Shea sitting in 2nd position. 3rd place is with Ross Maguire, coming through at the expense of James Cook, who's relegated to 4th. And then we've got that pack of riders, Troy Jeffrey, Ollie Walker and Ryan Hitchcock further down the order. Race now looks to be over 2nd. Ross Maguire versus Eddie O'Shea over P2. Making their way on towards Devil's Elbow. We're waiting to see if this race really starts to kick off. Garnes, O'Shea and Maguire. Maguire's closed back on them after a slow start to the race. He's made up for it so far. Looks to the inside on Paddock Bend, but they're under yellow flags around turn number 1 for a stricken rider on the circuit runoff. Ross Maguire closing in all the time though on the top 2. Garnes, O'Shea, Maguire in that order. A new personal best from Eddie O'Shea on lap number 3, a 53.4, so just a 1/10 of a second now away from the race leader Johnny Garnes. We've got a faller out of the final turn. Already back up to their feet and moving away. So it's been quite chaotic further down the order, but no such problems for the race leaders. In fact, it's been a fairly calm race, to be fair, up front. 5th, 6th and 7th is still an ongoing struggle. Ryan Hitchcock, after making his way up to 6th from 10th, has ended up going back down to 7th, although he's still in the mix to try and recover a place. No change in the top 3. Garnes, O'Shea, Maguire. Top 2 setting new personal bests on lap 4. Still separated by less than 2/10 of a second. Ollie Walker dropping back behind Ryan Hitchcock, but Hitchcock is still struggling to hold on to that position. Walker's coming back. Troy Jeffrey holding on just ahead of them. 0.3 of a second separating 3 riders from 5th to 7th. Similar situation up front, 0.4 of a second separating the top 3, and they've got a 2-second margin behind them then to James Cook, who in turn has 4-second buffer to Troy Jeffrey. So those positions looking settled. The race that we've got is 5th to 7th, and then obviously the lead trio, but 5th to 7th are particularly close this lap around, coming in towards Devil's Elbow. Leaders coming round to complete another lap. Who's going to be the trigger? So far, none of them has had the answer to forcing away past the other. Johnny Garnes, the fastest of the trio last lap around, but we're talking less than 1/10 of a second in differentials between the pace of these leaders. Close racing for 9th and 10th positions as well. Josh Bannister coming through there at the expense of Jack Kirsch, who drops down to 10th position. New personal best for Dylan Mellor, Josh Bannister and Jack Kirsch involved in that scrap from 8th down to 10th. 3 laps remaining. As again, positions 5 to 7 look set to change. Hitchcock trying to move in. Walker's moving. Hitchcock relegated to the tail of that train again. The leaders are running nose to tail, but nobody has been bold enough so far to try and shake things up. Maguire goes in hard on turn number 1. Eddie O'Shea blocks that run all the way up the Dragon Straight. It's where a lot of the overtaking manoeuvres have been executed this weekend, and still close further down the order with Ryan Hitchcock trying to recover that 6th place. All the while, Troy Jeffrey is only just about holding on to P5, while Walker and Hitchcock have swapped position repeatedly. Now they're going 3 abreast into the spoon. And Hitchcock remains at the tail of that group, and I think that's Ollie Walker moving on through. And Troy Jeffrey has been under siege, and looks to me as though he's lost a position in that fight. Race leader breaking away. Johnny Garnes on this lap seems to have pulled a little bit clear of Eddie O'Shea. Ross Maguire is still pressurising him as they come into the final lap now. Has Maguire got an answer to Eddie O'Shea at very least for 2nd position? Ross Maguire, the championship leader, remember, sits 3rd at the moment. His main series rival leading this race, so it's going to be 9 dropped points. And the AC40 Pros will be even closer heading into the final round of the season. There were only limited margins between the main contenders coming into this race weekend. The penultimate round, of course, of the 2017 campaign. Still the fight ongoing for 2nd. Johnny Garnes looks to have it sewn up, 0.6 of a second clear. Eddie O'Shea 2nd. Ross Maguire in 3rd, just 1/10 of a second behind. As they come on in towards Devil's Elbow now. Ryan Hitchcock trying to recover from 7th position at the expense now of Troy Jeffrey. Checkered flag being steadied, and Eddie O'Shea goes down on the final turn. Quite dramatically as well, jumps onto the bike. He's now trying to scramble it. Well, it's now running it through the off-track limits area. It's probably quicker to run it to the line than it is to try and start it again. Encouraged on Eddie O'Shea as he comes towards the line and does claim the checkered flag before promptly throwing himself onto the floor, having claimed 7th position. Well, there's no doubting the effort there from Eddie O'Shea. Just slid off into the final turn. 2nd place looked settled. Ross Maguire was probing for a way pass, but wasn't close enough. O'Shea then drops it on the final turn, but to his eternal credit, jumps up, gets the bike, and runs over the line to take 7th position. Ends up 18 seconds back from the rider he was fighting going into the last corner, Ross Maguire, who takes 2nd. So a bit of damage limitation for Ross Maguire. That final bend incident enables him to recover 4 points that he couldn't have been expecting to take, but it does still mean that Johnny Garnes gains 5 points more back over Ross Maguire in the context of the championship overall in the AC40 Pros.